Oh wait, let me just.
All right, we should be good. So I am here with my good friend Kayla. Go ahead and say hey.
Hi. Sorry, my earring is
And
not
this is,
working.
do you know Dr. Koval? Have you met her at
I
school?
don't think so.
Okay, well, this is for one of her classes, Dr.
Okay.
Koval. And this is the Allyship interview, a stakeholder in the disability community. So this is my friend Calix. And then if you just want to introduce yourself and how you relate to the community, either as a teacher or having been teaching students, just so that Dr. Koval knows who you are, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I am currently a grad student in the music therapy program, getting my equivalency for to be able to take sit for the board exam. And I'm in my first semester, so a majority of the music therapy specific work that I do is going to be at the site that I do my practicum at. There are some kids who are neurodivergent, and we do music therapy with them, both individually and in group work. So that's a music therapy side, and then the teaching side. I have been teaching guitar lessons for about the last like 2 years or no, maybe like year and a half. And I have like a handful of students, like, in and out. But yeah, I've been working with those kids for about a year and a half at a little music studio also in Montclair. Also, I have a lot of experience with children on the spectrum. I do individual support services and I help teach adult daily or yeah, adult daily living skills. And so I help them with fine motor skills and toileting and hygiene and things like that as well. And I use music usually as a vessel for that.
Okay, so now that we have that all covered, that's a lot of experience. That's a really big range of things between therapy and education that you
Yeah.
do. I think we can start with this question. You
Hmm.
can still see my screen while I highlighted,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, so it says, what is one thing you wished you learned or weren't prepared for in pre-service music teacher education around teaching music to students with special needs? So if you want to relate this to your guitar classes and your students with
Yeah,
special
yeah.
needs and those.
I one thing I wasn't prepared for was how like witty the kids were, and that's kind of like a silly answer, but they like even I work with three kids specifically who are I know that technically the term is nonverbal, but I like to use the term non-speaking just because they are verbal, like they say words and they're able to express what they want verbally, just not in the way that like you and I would communicate. But they are really funny and I feel like when you are in pre-service, when you're being prepared, when you're being trained for as a teacher or as a therapist, it's very by the book and it's very like, oh, well, these kids are gonna have experienced XYZ and they're gonna act like XYZ. But every human is different, every child is different. And I think that I didn't realize how much learning I would be doing. And I would not that I wish someone would have prepared me because I think that it's just something that you have to do in order to learn. But I had a friend describe it like when you have children that are non-speaking, you kind of have to it's like learning a new language for
Mhm,
every kid. And I
mhm.
think that that's something that's been illuminated to me, especially in the last couple of months, working with this population.
So when you say learning a new language for every student, I think that's interesting because there's still, even for students without disabilities, without neurodivergence, they all communicate in such
Oh,
different
yeah.
ways and have so many different needs. So is there, I don't know how I want to ask this, but is the bridge, I guess, greater between these students with special needs in terms of finding their way of communicating, or like can you relate how you might communicate to students who aren't neurodivergent and finding
Yeah.
their specific needs and how they need
Yeah.
attention, especially with younger kids who you really have to take into account that they aren't as independent. You know, older ones can generally handle themselves, end quotes, but younger students need attention in so many specific ways. So can you compare that to the students with neurodivergence and those areas of communication?
Yeah, I really do feel like there. is so much more commonality than differences. Like there are more similarities than differences when it comes to kids who are neurodivergent and those who are neurotypical. Mostly because, like you said, when you're a toddler, when you're 5, 6, like they don't know how to
Yeah,
communicate anyway. Like even if they do have the words, even if they are speaking full sentences. So regardless, your job as a teacher or a therapist is to use what you have in order to understand their wants, their needs, what they don't want, what they don't need. Because I think one thing that is so important is trust, right? Both the kids should trust me, but they shouldn't just trust me because I'm an adult.
right,
I have to earn their trust too. And then I have to also be able to trust them, and they need to know that I trust them because that way you can build that rapport and build a relationship that will kind of allow for growth to happen. And I feel like by constantly being like, oh, neurodivergent kids over here and neurotypical kids over here, it doesn't allow for the teachers to be able to find those bridges, like you said. And I feel like learning those languages with each kid, like it just takes time
yeah,
and it just takes some care. Like you just have to want it a little bit. And like again, every kid is different. Some kids are more shy, some kids are more talkative, some kids are more outgoing, some kids aren't. And it's just about fine-tuning the classroom experience to that, I
I like
feel.
what you said about it doesn't let by segregating the students, it doesn't allow for them to find those bridges and make those connections. I think it's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and
So,
that's not even to say that like separate special education classes are bad because
yeah,
like both can exist, right? Because it's like not a
hmm,
vacuum. But I just feel really strongly about um not pushing neurodivergent kids to assimilate to
right,
neurotypicality.
right, right,
So, like, we should be able, as teachers, to accommodate all different types of students. And it's hard when you're one teacher versus 20 kids in your
right.
class. And there's only so much you can do with resources. But at the same time, on like a smaller scale, it's been really nice to kind of just have like a mixed bag of kids because I
Hmm.
get to know them and spend different time with them like depending on the day and so yeah, in that way I feel like having the groups merge but also having separate spaces where they feel safe is also so important.
Right. So that's actually a perfect transition talking about how what the teacher can do for the students in such a difficult situation. I wanted to talk about this section now. This is
Mhm.
talking about what you need from me as a teacher, or
Yeah.
I guess you're a teacher too. So what you intend to give the kids, and this is under the person who self-identifies as having a disability. So if you're comfortable opening up about your
Yeah.
disability, neurodivergence, and then speaking on that in terms of what you could have gained or what you wish you could have had in your schooling, maybe in music education or just general education, however you want to frame that.
Yeah, I think, well, I was diagnosed with ADHD my sophomore year of my undergraduate, like in college. So that's like I was like 20 and
Yeah,
you have a therapist telling you that you have like a learning disability that like usually they diagnose like 7-year-olds with.
yeah,
So then I
yeah.
was like, how does that change the way that I learn? How does that change the way that I need to learn? Does it reshape, the way that I should be approaching my studies? Like, is there something that I've been doing wrong for the last, 17 years that I've been in
Yeah.
school? So I feel like, Montclair is like a great place because, and like most universities do have like some form of a DRC, so like a Disability Resources Center, who provide accommodations. And I was able to get things like deadline extensions and,
Mhm.
being able to take breaks and do alternate testing because for me, like I have horrible test anxiety and like I've never been good at taking tests and like the pressure was just too much. But luckily I had really great professors who worked really well. Well, legally they had to, but they worked really well with the DRC to provide those accommodations. But that being said, I think most of all communication is like, and that's kind of like the theme of what we're talking about, right?
Mhm.
Like The communication is what is the top priority between students with a disability and teachers who are teaching them because even on my end, like as the student, I need to be in constant communication, being like, okay, well,
Right.
I need help with this. And like the first step is being able to identify that you do need that help. And speaking, and on the teacher's end, I feel like what would be the best is just an open mind and
Mhm.
like, being able to have kind of the tough conversations of like, hey, you're kind of falling behind. You're in these classes, what can I do to help you? Do you need more time? Would it help if I gave you a definitive due date for this? Like, would it help if I, gave you incentive? Like, and again, these are all things that time is a resource and time is, very hard to come by. And we both know as music students.
Yeah.
But I even just taking that extra, like, hey, can I speak to you for like 2 minutes after class can be truly like like impactful on someone's education.
Mhm. And then this is out of curiosity. Have you ever had any experiences where a teacher wasn't as generous with your disability accommodations? Any friction there? And if so, how has that went?
Honestly, no. The
That's
only
good.
times that I've run into issues like that was from my end, from like
Mhm.
not communicating properly, like, oh, I'm having a hard time, especially when I first was diagnosed and first got the accommodations. That felt like, okay, like I signed up for it and now I'm good. But then
Right.
you have to take the step of like emailing your professors or going to talk to them and being like, hey, I'm like kind of having a hard time right now. Is it okay if I have like an extra 2 days for this assignment?
Mhm.
Can I turn in this paper next week? And I feel like transitioning into graduate school now, I've been able to communicate a little bit better with my professors, and they're always so accommodating and so willing because at the end of the day, I think what students sometimes don't really realize is that teachers want you to succeed. Like teachers
Right.
don't want you to fail. And, they want to do whatever they can to make sure that you, at the very least, pass the class.
Right.
And there was one time that like I was in a jazz piano class and I just like was not myself that semester and like I was struggling. And I had emailed her being like, I don't think I can like perform well for this final and I would rather retake the class. And she was like, you know what? Just submit it to me virtually and we can figure something out. And so it was just like
Right.
it's as easy as that. And so it kind of takes vulnerability on both sides to reach that kind of middle ground.
Right. 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 I've been in situations like that before. I know exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And so to end this off, I'm just going to ask this question here about how many students do you teach? And I'll rephrase it because I just want to have a kind of range of your demographics. So across all your jobs, across your music lessons, and across your home visits, I won't say how many students you teach, but what's the ratio
Yeah.
of neurotypical to neurodivergent kids? Would you say it's like across everybody that you see, is it like
Right.
60-40, 70-20,
I want to say like 70-30, like
70-20, 70-30?
70% is neurodivergent and
Okay.
30% is neurotypical. Because most kids are like I haven't met a lot of kids that are neurotypical. And also
Right.
like I feel like even those terms are like slowly becoming outdated because it's such a spectrum. Like you
It
can't
is.
just it's not black and white.
Mhm.
So I feel like it's kind of more like a graph in a way rather than like a definitive percentage, but or like a Venn diagram kind of, I guess. But yeah, I think but of those who are like diagnosed specifically with I want to say like specifying like autism because like that is
Right. Right.
the population of kids that I do work with a lot. I would say like about half is like
Okay.
diagnosed with some form of autism and they're like all ages. The youngest I have is 8 and the
Mhm.
oldest I have is like 15.
Okay.
Yeah, and then that also kind of contributes with like, some of them have IEP. Most of them do have IEPs,
Mhm.
but or are in like specialized, like specific like special ed classes. And that's been really nice too, hearing from their parents, like the experiences that they have in school, because a lot of schools now are taking the approach of like, how are we going to teach like life skills
Right, right,
in
right,
school. And then also like my role in that is like, for example, like I have to teach one child toileting and I like made a parody of Wheels on the Bus. So like the paper
right,
on the roll goes round and round and he responds so much more melodically than
right,
like
right,
plain
right.
speech, right? And like obviously again, we as music educators know that like things stick like that when you sing something, when you make a rap out of something. You know,
Mhm.
we were when you're born, what's the first thing that happens? Like nursery rhymes are being sung to you.
Yeah,
So, and that's kind of like my music therapy brain, I feel like coming into play there. But all of that science kind of like coming up and coming around to just further prove like how important music is and music education too. Like I have so many friends who are music teachers in public schools and we have conversations about, you know, their special ed kids all the time. If they have one or two in a class of 15, they're still doing everything that they can to make sure
right.
that they feel included. Because at the end of the day, every student is a student. They're there to
Yeah,
learn.
yeah.
Like whether they know it or not, whether they want to or not, they are there to learn. And it's
Mhm.
our job to make sure that that happens.
That's true. That's very true. So I think that's a wrap, unless you have any final remarks. I'm ready to call it there.
Yeah, no, I feel like this was a really cool conversation. I know that we didn't like talk too much specifically about music,
Right,
but I do feel like having this as like those underlying principles, like
right,
music
right.
is like the music part is the easy part.
Yes,
It's the
yes.
yeah, because like, you know, we can play our scales, we
Mhm.
can write and compose and do chord analysis and like that's fine. It's
It's the
the
education part.
right. It's the education part and the psychology part and the working with
Mhm,
kids part. So, but
mhm.
yeah, good good work. I wish you luck in your musical education endeavors. And
Thank
thanks
you.
for reaching out.
Of course. So, Dr. Kamal, I'll see you when I see you. This has been my allyship interview because I am a true ally. So,
It's true.
goodbye. I'm going to stop this share. Stop share. And then, how do I stop recording? Oh, right